We're joined now by the Mayor of Watford, Peter Taylor. Peter, welcome to The Breakfast Show. You've been chatting to Benji on Drive recently, but we're glad we've stolen you. You're a friend of the show. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Miles. Hope you are too.
Yeah, doing well. Big news at the moment. Of course, Boris Johnson's press briefing yesterday. I mean, it was a lot of rehashing what he'd already said over the weekend, but the new rules about going in gardens was the big one. Up to 6 people can now join in together. In regards to Watford, the town centre's opening up again next week from Monday. What can we expect?
Yeah, I mean, the town centre has remained open throughout, the last 2 months. You've had places like Sainsbury's, obviously, and our banks still been open. But what we're going to see from the 15th of June, more and more shops will be opening. We're doing loads of work with the local businesses, with the police, to make sure that's safe and successful. So, for example, making sure the queues work and the people can visit our town centre if they want, but they can stay safe and make sure they keep the distance from other people as well.
Markets can open next week. Do we know if the market in the town centre is going to be opening?
That's right. So some of the stores have actually stayed open at the market throughout. So we've had, for example,
the food,
the food ones. We will start to see more of that open. That'll be gradual. So we'll have 2, I think, stores initially. Again, the important thing is having them safely apart, and also having the queues in place that people can, while they're waiting to get their food, can make sure that they stay 2 metres away from other people. So that's all going to be, you'll see gradually more and more stores opening up. But as I say, most of that's from next week, from next Friday. Yeah,
have you had any indication as to how the social distancing is going to be achieved with the markets? Because it's going to be quite hard to police. Is there going to be a police force in the town that we're going to see trying to help out?
Yeah, so we will have the police will obviously be doing their patrols. We'll also have marshals there for a number of things. So one is to keep people queuing safely and keeping their distance, but also there's been some road layout changes. So the lower part of the High Street towards the Pyramid and Watford High Street Station, less traffic can use that part because we've had to extend the pavements. So there'll be marshals there to make sure that people are observing those rules as well. I mean, I think the big message is to people, please be patient and considerate. We do want the shops to open, but we want to make sure that people are safe when they do that. So we've got to look out for each other. It's for all of our interests that we make sure the virus doesn't come back, and that we manage to go into our town centre but do that safely. So please be just considerate of other people.
So, in regards to walking and cycling, how are the changes to the town going to be made? How are we going to make it more walking and cycling friendly around Watford as well? I know there's been a bit of a dispute when it comes to overgrown vegetation in areas like the A41. Are we going to see improvements to the pathway so that we can keep our distance whilst also keeping active?
Yeah, so we are working with the County Council, Hertfordshire County Council, on some improvements. So already we've seen changes in the town centre, that part of the High Street. But as you say, there's also people coming into the town centre, and that'll be the next phase of that work. So, for example, on St Albans Road, there'll be some changes made. Again, talking to the local businesses, making sure it works for them. But ultimately, Hertfordshire County Council are the people that are responsible for our roads and pavements, but we're working really closely with them to make it work as best as it possibly can. You're right that lots of people are, if they come into the town centre, people won't be keen to travel by bus, which is understandable, but we have seen a big increase in the number of people using the barrel bikes, for example. I would say if everyone tries to drive into the centre of Watford, the town will just grind to a halt with the amount of congestion. So if possible, we're saying to people, do think about, when it's nice weather, can you cycle or walk into the town centre? And we know for many people they'll want to drive. But at the same time, if everyone drives, I think there'll be a lot of congestion. For people that are driving, because like you've mentioned, public transport is it's an intimidating thing for people at the moment, if it's not beat around the bush. But is there going to be some improved parking facilities for people that are maybe coming in from slightly further away? Yeah, so the town centre car parks will be opening again gradually, and so we'll see those changes. At the moment, the council has been very relaxed, so our own car parks, for example, at the Town Hall or Avenue Car Park, there's no charges or enforcement there, so anyone can park there. We've also relaxed control parking zones across the town, but we're keeping that closely under review, because as things return to some kind of normality, the reasons those were introduced in the first place was to help local residents be able to park on their own streets. And so over time we'll see those kind of enforcement coming back. We've not decided exactly when that will be, but encourage people to kind of keep an eye on things, because it will be gradual changes over the next few weeks.
Now, the Abbey line's been closed for a while now between Watford Junction and St Albans Abbey. Is there any news as to when that can reopen to get rid of the replacement bus service?
I don't know when that's going to reopen. I have raised it with London North Western, who operate that, and obviously the trains into central London as well. I know that it's an important link. Lots of us have been working from home over the last couple of months, but as more and more people start to travel to offices or to town centres, then we need these transport links to return. So I've not been told when the train will return, but obviously the sooner the better from my perspective, and I'll keep asking the question to London North Western.
Following on from that, there's been good news on the passing loop on the Abbey line, which should mean that service, when it does come back, or when the passing loop's built, is more regular. Can you explain a little bit to us how that's going to work?
Yeah, so at the moment, I think there can only be one train on the actual line, and so it means that the timetable, if you use the Abbey line, it's always a little bit, you've got to try and remember this quite unusual timetable, where it'd be much better if there was kind of on the hour, every half hour, trains from from Watford Junction going to St Albans. But that can only happen if there's a passing loop and trains can pass each other. And so the government have now agreed to fund further works looking into that. It's not that they're funding the passing loop, but it kind of got to the next stage of looking into it. And I'm really supportive of that, because I know roads between Watford and St Albans are often really busy when people are driving, but actually the train journey is only 16 minutes, and it should be a well-used line if it was regular and, it wasn't too expensive and reliable, and so that's what we want to see there. And so we're pressing for that passing loop to be introduced, and the government have now taken it to kind of the next stage, and hopefully we'll get that implemented one day.
Now, last time you were on the breakfast show with us, when we came to your lovely, lovely office, you mentioned that you were pushing for the extension of the Met Line into Watford Junction. You sent a letter to Boris Johnson, to the Prime Minister. Now, somewhat understandably, Boris Johnson's had quite a bit on his plate recently, but has he had the time to get back to you at all?
He hasn't. So I haven't heard back from him on that. I mean, we're still making the case that it's a really, obvious benefits to the town. It's a scheme that's ready. There's an unused train line that we could put the tubes on. But he hasn't replied to me. So we'll keep making the case. I know that it's something that I've raised with our MP as well. Lots of businesses and the councils all agree that it would be a really beneficial thing to the town. But I've not had a reply from the Prime Minister so far.
Biggest story in the news this week, before yesterday, was, hashtag Cumgate, which I found a very funny hashtag, but the Dominic Cummings saga. What have you made of the situation?
Yeah, I think it's, obviously I'm not an MP and not a member of the Conservatives, but I do think it's been, loads of people are really angry about it and feeling that they've made huge sacrifices. And I think as politicians, the key thing is that it's not one rule for one group of people.
But he's not a politician either, technically, is he? So from your perspective, as someone who, like you said, you're not an MP, but you're in politics, you've been living by the guidelines. He set the guidelines. Do you believe that he should have been following them more strictly?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really important that we all, that it's not kind of pick and choose. And I think the danger now is that people, the message always has been, you've got to do things that don't come naturally to you, things that are tough, because we're all in this together. We've all got to make sacrifices. And I think the danger now is that some people say, well, he's not doing it, so why should I? And actually the consequence of that is that you see the virus spreading more quickly. And so I think there is a genuine issue about the impact of things like this. And also it's a big distraction. As you say, it's been the government have been having to spend a lot of time talking about that rather than the important health messages for the last week. And so, as I say, I think I can understand why people are really angry about that situation.
Just because I've not spoken to you about this before, just generally the government's response to the COVID-19 crisis, how have you found it?
There's been some good bits and some not so good bits. So, I mean, initially, I think they were right to the furlough scheme, supporting businesses, lots of investment. which was really important to help the economy. As a local council, we're going to see a big impact on our finances, and there has been some support. Obviously, we'd like to see more. I think the messaging could have been clearer, and I think kind of the lockdown could have happened more quickly. But overall, I mean, the town's responded brilliantly. The government, as I say, there's been some good things and some things that they could have done slightly better.
Before we go, we need to talk about schools, because there were announcements from Boris Johnson about schools going back next week. Have you been in contact with some of our local schools? Do you know what their plans are? How are they feeling about going back?
Yeah, I have been in touch with the schools, so I know that they're doing a heck of a lot of work to make that work. So obviously for the receptions, year 1, year 6 in most primary schools will be returning. I think it's not the same for every primary school, and they've been working out how they can implement that. The key thing obviously is to do it safely. I spoke to teachers in one primary school, and they're saying how difficult it is just emotionally, because they're having to change the layout of the classrooms, removing toys, and so especially for the children that are 5 and 6 year olds, to change the classroom can be a bit difficult for the teachers, just to think, they want it to be as it was previously. But I know they're doing a lot of work to make sure that when the children do return, it's done safely. And of course, those early years are really, really important for the children's development. My own children are aged 10, 8 and 4, so none of them will be returning in the current kind of plans at the moment. But I just know that, they're ready to go back. We've had lots of homeschooling over the last couple of months. And, I think they're keen to see their friends. And I think, obviously we want to see our schools reopening, the teachers do, but it's got to be done safely.
Well, going away from your role as a mayor, putting your parent hat on, how do you feel about your children going back?
Yeah, I think that when it's the right time, when the schools put the measures in and it's done safely, then that'll be the right time for them to go. I was a teacher before I had this job, and I think that teachers want to teach, and that's why they got into the profession. But at the same time, you've got to be understanding why parents are nervous about it. And also, I think there's got to be some flexibility, that each family has its own set of circumstances. If you're living with grandparents who've got an underlying health condition, then it's understandable why you're particularly nervous about sending your child back, because if they pick up the virus, they might be fine, but they could pass it on to an older relative. So I think there's got to be flexibility on both sides, but ultimately we want to see our schools opening and safely, so our kids can learn.
Absolutely. And just before you go, finally, we've seen you doing the Watford Together quizzes. How's your new best mate Luther Blissett doing?
Oh, he's doing very, very well. So the quizzes are going well. And the other thing we've got this week, actually, we've launched our auction and our raffle. And so there's loads of prizes online, and lots of people, I know, Gary Foley came on Vibe to talk about the walk for Watford as well. So lots of people doing a walk and then nominating 5 people to do that. So I did my walk yesterday. It's been really good. I mean, lots of money being raised for fantastic local charities because they're working harder than ever, and a lot of them have lost a significant amount of income. So if any of your listeners want to bid for auction prizes, we've got some great prizes, or join the raffle, that would be fantastic.
Brilliant. That's the Watford Together Facebook page and watfordtogether.co.uk. Peter, thank you for taking the time to talk to us this morning. Watford Mayor Peter Taylor. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Miles.